Howdy, little buckaroos and or partners. Welcome to the Haunted Chronicles, episode 140. The date, coincidentally, well, it's not coincidence, but the date is 12/2. Buckle my shoe. And you didn't think I'd be able to squeeze that in, did you? But I finagled it. I said finagle. Thank you.
You said finagle.
We have a great guest for you tonight, Laurene Gomez, who is resting comfortably in the Haunted Chronicles green room in our Lazy Boy recliner, drinking some tea. That's Lazy Boy, with a selection of recliners, chairs, sofas, sectionals, and ottomans. You can't go wrong with buying your loved one of these for the holidays. That's Lazy Boy, and you can visit lazyboy.com and buy your seat there. Laurene will join us shortly. I am Mr. Haunted, joined by Jennifer Jingle Bells Runyon. Jennifer, there.
Hey, jingle bells, ding-a-ling-a-ling.
You'll be Jingle Bells Runyon for the rest of the month.
I'm going to be little jingle bells now. There you go. I like it.
Brock Bobtail Burrows is not feeling well and won't be joining us.
I know. We miss you, Brock. We hope you're better. For sure.
Dr. Dave is at the controls. How was your Thanksgiving week? We had a little break.
So nice. It was so nice. It was just family, the kids, their boyfriend and girlfriend were here, and we ate in our pajamas. I mean, we never got out of our jammies all day. It was the most fantastic day. I loved it. And I watched Twilight Zone all day and football, and it was great.
I forgot
just great.
Twilight Zone.
I know. And what about you, sir? What about you? How are you doing, Jimmy?
I don't have any interesting stories, but I could tell you how I feel inside.
How are you feeling?
I am happier than a sugar plum mouse on a sleigh, right? Traversing through a snow-covered glen full of candy cane splendor all the ding-dong day like he's freaking Indiana Jones or something.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
He's really happy.
Yeah.
In all his holiday splendor. And I do have some breaking news. Breaking news!
Uh-oh.
All right. Been a very sad week. Jim Delegati, creator of the McDonald's Big Mac sandwich, died this week at 98 years old.
Oh.
And he invented this sandwich in 1967. And he ate at least one a week for the last 50 years. So there goes that theory, right?
Right.
And I just wanted to say to everyone, bless his little 2 all-beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bunned little heart.
Bless that. Bless that.
Didn't know we were talking about that today, right?
Oh, he's 98, though. 98 and having a hamburger once a week.
He had a good run.
Yeah, he did. Did he have fries with that burger? Listen, you gotta have the fries. I found out what the magic is about those fries. Yeah. And maybe everybody knows this, but I moved to Idaho when I was going to have my second baby, and we moved to Idaho, and behind our house we could see this big, huge estate, and it was up on a hill, and at the top of the hill was a house and a big flagpole, and I could see it right from my backyard. And that was owned by a man named J.R. Simplot. And J.R. Simplot, his company was the one that did all the French fries for all of McDonald's everywhere. And I learned while I lived there that the magic secret to how good they are is because they coat them in milk.
I didn't know that.
I know. Little fun fact. I don't know how they do it, but there's nothing better than McDonald's French fries. So there you go.
I remember them being even better when I was a kid.
Yes.
I don't know if they changed something.
Yeah, you might be right about that. They always have to mess it up. Mm-hmm, go ahead.
Did I ever tell you about the patch I had on my jacket?
No.
Well, when I was a kid, it was cool to get the Levi's jean jacket.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I thought it was anyway.
Yeah.
And in the Happy Meal, you got a prize. It was like an iron-on patch, and I had "Come Fry with Me" patch on my jacket. I thought it was so cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I have other good news.
Yes.
Tonight's guest has agreed to participate in Scary Movie Celebrity Birthdays with us tonight.
I love this.
Frank Sinatra's rolling in his grave.
Come fry with me. Come fry. Let's fry
We're
away.
doing a little pun. So Lorene's going to join us, so we'll bring her in now to do the birthdays with us.
Yeah.
Tonight's guest has over 25 years investigating haunted homes and places. She's appeared on Primetime Live. She's in the new movie Hostage to the Devil. And she also happens to be a psychotherapist. Also, our good friend, Laurene Gomez. Laurene, you're still here?
I am here. Happy to be here. I want to play the game.
Thank you for joining us.
That's the only reason I came. I want to play the birthday game.
Yes.
YOLO!
Brocky!
Yep. Rock here in spirit.
Yes.
All right. So this is for new listeners. It's a game we play called Scary Movie Celebrity Birthdays, where a celebrity who has appeared in a scary movie or multiple scary movies has a birthday next week, and then you guys guess how old they're going to be. And I have 3 prepared for you guys. And guess along in the chat, fellas. I'm watching.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, man, I should have looked up the pronunciation of this before I... Amanda
Siegfried.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Her. She was in the TV series Veronica Mars, Red Riding Hood. She was in Jennifer's Body, and she was Karen Smith in Mean Girls.
She was also in Big Love, too.
Right. Darn
Yeah.
was.
And Mamma Mia. Mm-hmm. You go first, Laurene, because you're our guest. So you're gonna. I'm gonna let you're gonna lead us off on our answers here.
Oh gosh, I don't think she's all that old, so I'm gonna say 28.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I'm gonna say 30.
Well, Amanda, she's 30 today. Will be 31 later this week.
31.
Wow.
Oh. Okay, well, we were close. We did good there.
I like Jen. Good for you.
I was close, right? She
All
was
right,
also in Mamma Mia, just so you guys know. If anyone ever saw Mamma Mia, she was great.
You know what else she was in? And I was going to write it down, but I know I would myrtleize. Is that a word? Myrtleize the pronunciation. That movie, it's spelled like Les Miserables.
Les Miserables.
Oh,
Les Miserables.
Yeah.
She was in that.
Yes, she was. You're right. She was. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and my good friend, C. Thomas Howell, has a birthday next week. Who was in the TV series Sleepy Hollow, The Haunting of Marston Manor, The Hitcher. He was in E.T., the Extraterrestrial, and, of course, was Pony Boy Curtis in The Outsiders.
Yeah.
Pony Boy.
Pony Boy. I love that.
Pony Boy. Oh, wow. Well, that movie was made quite a while ago, so I'm going to say that Pony Boy is 48. I have no
48. Idea. Okay. All right. Let me think about this for a minute. Pony Boy. I'm going to say, I know it's going to be 54.
Pony Boy will be 50.
Oh.
And I was thinking, when I found that one, do you think that is arguably the best cast ever of any movie? I mean, especially what they became.
The Outsiders?
Yeah.
That was a great movie. I see. I was so partial to the book, though. Yeah, I was so partial to the book that I reluctantly went to go see it, and I loved it. They were all so good in it.
Yeah,
So
a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one more. This
Yes.
guy, you have a little connection with this guy, Jim. He was in
Hmm.
the 2016 Ghostbusters, and he was in 1985's Trick or Treat movie. He played himself in Little Nicky, the Prince of Frickin' Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne. How old
Oh,
would
wow.
Ozzy be next week?
I'm going to say 71.
Ooh. Um,
Or maybe
okay,
he just looks 71.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll just say 72.
He's just a kid yet. He'll be 68.
Oh, he just really,
Oh,
he played hard. He
oh,
played
very
hard.
hard.
Yeah, yeah. He played very hard. He looks older.
I hope he makes it to 98 like the Big Mac fella.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I know. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Jimmy, I want to start this out
okay.
because Lorena, I have heard about you from Jimmy. He's so excited to have you on the show. And you guys have known each other for 20 plus years. Tell us what the connection is with Jimmy, how you guys met, and then we'll go from there.
Oh, well, I met Jimmy at the Ed and Lorraine Warren's classes that they were giving. Remember that, Jim? Oh, God,
Yes,
that must have
I
been
was a
more
young
than 25
student.
years ago. They gave classes, the famous Ghostbusters, Ed and Lorraine Warren. They gave classes here in Connecticut many, many years ago, and I decided, I'm going to go and see what that's about, because I had
Hmm.
had my own experiences growing up, and I couldn't believe that somebody else knew about this stuff. So I had to go and just kind of figure it out, and I met Jimmy, and I met Rick and Scott and a whole bunch of other people, and that was just fabulous. And it was funny because Ed Warren, just in talking with him, he learned that I was in school I was graduating with my bachelor's in psychology, and I was enrolled in graduate school to become a psychotherapist. So he wanted
Hmm.
to kind of bring me out on cases. He assigned me to cases right away. He didn't hesitate. So I kind of got thrown in by the seat of my pants a little bit there. And Jim was kind enough to kind of be patient with me and take me along on everything. And it just became a whirlwind of, going to all these houses and different cities and just talking with people and finding out what their experiences were. So it was fabulous, absolutely
So did you
fabulous.
guys travel a lot together? I mean, you and Jim and the Warrens, I mean, did you guys go out of state a lot? I mean, how many cases did you guys do with them?
Oh God, I can't even. I don't even think I could put a total number on the number of cases because it was just so many. It was an absolute whirlwind. It was hard to keep up with because we would go to like Bridgeport and Hartford and just all over the place. We would go out of state sometimes, depending on the proximity to where we were. Just lots of cases. I think there were so many cases. It got to a point where I couldn't even keep them all straight.
Right.
So I might have, gotten my facts mixed up on, different ones here and there in my memory. But there were a number of cases that really stood out at the time. And I think one of the ones was up in Massachusetts. I think that was my first exposure to like a truly possessed person, I think. Up until that time, there were a couple of other cases that I remember seeing someone that I think was on their way, maybe had infestation with demonic, but yeah, the Massachusetts case is definitely the big one that stands out in my mind, and that's the one that ultimately Primetime Live found out about. I guess they heard it on or saw it on our website at the time. So I think they contacted you, Jim, didn't they? I don't remember, but
No, I think it was Joe and Jen.
oh, okay, yeah. And they came out and they interviewed and they filmed us during the. Well, no, they took Jim's tape because Jim would tape everything. He filmed everything. He had the presence of mind to gather enough evidence all the time, and that somehow got onto Primetime Live, and it just went nationwide. And then from there, it was like the floodgates opened because people were calling and the phones were ringing off the hook. And at that point, we were really going out of state and just traveling all over the place and just meeting so many people and hearing so many different stories. And it was just amazing how, there was like a underlying thread to a lot of the cases, just the similarities of them all. And I think we all really learned an awful lot, probably a lot more than we wanted to know. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, if you want to call it fun.
You reminded me of a story, quick one, that when you said we went out of state, I'm not sure if you went on this one, but we had to take a plane to, I think it was Virginia, on a case, and one of the girls in our group, Jennifer, forgot her license or ID to get on the plane, and this was before, they clamped down a lot, and it was right after the Primetime Live episode, and she found one of these tabloid magazines did a story on the exorcism from Primetime Live, and it has our pictures on it.
Yeah.
And she brought that over to the person at the desk, showing that that's her ID, and they accepted it.
They accepted it. Oh, that's so funny.
Because they had her name and picture.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, that was before the times of high security in the airports.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so now what was the first experience that you had when you started, experiencing anything? Okay, wait, Jen's going to stop for 1 second. I'm going to take a breath because I just absolutely made no sense. Okay, Laurene, please tell us about the first experiences that you had, and how old were you? That's better.
Oh, well, I've had psychic experiences all my life. I've had a lot of weird happenings in my life, even as a child. I remember I was visited frequently by spirits, just looking at me outside my bedroom window. They would kind of look at me and wave and smile and, very positive, very loving spirits. I was never afraid of them or anything. I knew that they were, friendly and loving to me. And they would just wave at me through my bedroom window. But you got to keep in mind that my bedroom was on the second floor of the house.
Oh,
so
wow.
They were just kind of just hanging out outside my windows.
That's not normal at all.
Right.
I didn't know any better.
Well, how old were you? How old were you when that was happening?
I was probably like 5 or 6 at that point. And, I just thought that they were like friends. I always considered them to be my friends. They had the faces of children, but I knew that they weren't children. But they were very loving, so I wasn't afraid. It was a positive experience. And, I've always had weird things like that. And I remember my grandmother, she came to me one night and she let me know that she had died that evening. And then when the telephone rang, I told my mom that it was about my grandmother and that she was killed in a car accident. And that's, the person on the other end of the phone was calling to tell us that my grandmother had died. So,
wow.
Just lots of weird things, I remember on 2 different occasions, I must have been levitating because I remember waking up and my body was like just coming back down onto the mattress. So I'm not sure what I was doing or, how far I went, but I'm pretty sure I went somewhere. So that kind of prompted me to start reading about things, and I started looking into astral projection because I figured maybe that's what it was. So I guess just in learning about it, I started doing it in my sleep. I started, leaving my body. My spirit would leave my body. And I would travel all over the place, both physical places and non-physical places, like different dimensions and stuff. And I know it sounds really weird, but it was just so cool because I remember being outside of my house and becoming very consciously aware of every single little leaf on every single tree, every blade of grass in the yard, and every ant that might be on the blade of grass. It was just total awareness. It was the best feeling. And I remember thinking in the moment, this must be what it's like to die because it's just total awareness. And it was just such a great feeling. It wasn't scary at all. It was just absolutely amazing. But then later on, probably around like age 10 or 11, the experiences weren't so cool anymore because then I started getting visited by, I guess you would call them negative entities. And I remember being woken up in the middle of the night, and I would have this sensation that someone was grabbing my feet and just pulling me down towards the foot of the bed. But then I'd look down, and there's no one there. So I started putting some of the pieces together because I realized that I had that very distinct feeling of being pulled down, but my body didn't move, so I figured out that it was pulling my spirit, because that pulling sensation was very similar to the sensation of leaving my body during astral projection. So I kind of realized then that it was probably after my spirit. So it was starting to get a little scary then, and those visits, they started happening very regularly, probably about, I don't know, maybe once or twice a month. And that lasted for years. I mean, I was visited regularly for probably about 20 years. It just kept going on. And sometimes it was more intense or more forceful in their visits than other times. But so I guess when I was around 13 or 14, I read Ed Warren's book, The Demonologist, and that really that was the turning tide for me. That totally blew me away, because I remember thinking, like, wow, there's somebody else out there who knows about this stuff. I'm not crazy. I'm not making it up. It's really happening. Mm-hmm. So I started doing a lot of research on it. And, there was a point where I just started reading everything I could get my hands on. And back then, we didn't have the internet to Google at that time. So I would just, sit in the school library, or, afterwards I would go to the library in town, and I would just pore over stuff. And, I was just reading anything I could about the different religions of the world, or the spirit plane, or Santeria. I was learning about angelic hierarchies and Kundalini energy, and, anything metaphysical. And I just felt driven, to learn as much as I could. So, all my friends are out, hanging out and having parties and stuff. And I'm in the library, poring
Mm-hmm.
over this stuff. And I just kept notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of all this stuff. So,
I have a question.
I learned an awful lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question going back to your childhood experiences. When you were like seeing people at the window and having out of body experiences, did you share that with family members or your parents? And if you did, what did they say? What was the response?
No, I didn't share that with anybody. And, in fact, this is stuff that I really don't talk about an awful lot, because, especially the negative stuff. I don't want to, give a lot of credence to it. So I haven't shared a lot of this stuff with people. It's only because, Jim keeps asking me about it. I'm talking about it now, but no. And I think if I had shared it, I don't think I would have been believed, because it sounds kind of crazy, and I just thought it was normal. I thought, I got to an age, where I realized that it's not normal. This stuff doesn't happen to everybody, but just growing up, I kind of thought I didn't think it was anything unusual until the negative stuff started happening. So,
yeah.
But I think, one of the scariest moments I've ever had in my life was later on. I'd gotten married very young in life, and my husband and I moved to a very remote area, a cabin on the lake in the woods. And there was like a little small cluster of these little cabins together. There was like maybe 5 cabins together. And so we had a very small handful of neighbors. And everybody had dogs there. I'm not sure why, but we all had a bunch of dogs. And my husband traveled a lot. So there was one night he was away, and we had a German Shepherd, and she would always sleep on the floor by my bed. And one night in the middle of the night, I woke up and I could hear her growling, on the floor next to me. But it was just a very odd growl. I mean, I've heard a growl before, but this one was very different. It was just very low, and it was like a quiet growl, very quiet. So I just, I wanted to turn to her and put my hand down to find out what was going on, but I couldn't. I realized I couldn't move, and I felt like the room was incredibly cold, and it was very dark, and we lived off a dirt road, so there wasn't any street lights out there, so it was just incredibly dark. I couldn't see anything. and I was just feeling so much fear, and I realized I couldn't move at all. So I'm just lying on my back, and I look up above me, and I could see, I could barely start making anything out in the darkness, but I could start seeing these two round shapes in front of me over my head. And as I watched them, they started forming into like eyes, and they were like red eyes, and then they were kind of like black, but then red, and it was just very odd. I'm not doing a very good job articulating this, but they were both red and black at the same time, if that makes any sense. And it's just very odd. I can't describe it any better than that. And those eyes were filled with such hatred. I just felt, I've never felt hatred like that before. I didn't really even know what hatred was, I don't think. And it just felt like such loathing and hatred. And I didn't even have, the wherewithal to be able to do anything or think anything. I'm just looking at these eyes. And then finally, the only thought that came to my head was, Jesus Christ, please help me. And as soon as I had that thought in my head, the eyes went away. They just disappeared. And I was able to move. And I was just absolutely frozen in fear. And I started realizing that maybe I was being presented with a choice, because, I had spent so much time learning about things that I don't know if I should have been learning about them or not, but clearly somebody was presenting me with a choice. And that time living out there with that cluster of cabins, it was just a strange time of my life. I realized I was like being exposed to something that I really didn't want to be exposed to. And one of the neighbors in the other cabins, they had a lot of dogs, and those dogs would growl and they would just wail all night long. And then another neighbor, he would hang animal sacrifices upside down on a clothesline, or sometimes he would nail them on a tree, like upside down on a tree facing my house. So I would have these, dead lizards and snakes, and one time even a turtle, nailed to a tree upside down, looking at my house. And, I was also channeling and being given lottery numbers, one by one. And over the course of a couple of weeks, I would just get lottery numbers, and I knew what they were for. And I had 4 out of the 5 numbers, and I was getting really close to getting the lottery. And then I said, you know what, if I get this last number, I don't know what that's going to mean, but I don't think I want to be accepting a gift from darkness. So I just kind of made a choice at that point, and I said, I have free will, and I'm going to exercise it, and I don't think I want to be any part of this. So we packed our stuff, and we moved the heck out of there. And I think shortly after that, that's when I started hearing about the classes that Ed and Laurene was giving. And I think that kind of helped further my education in the demonic and possession and ghosts and spirits, and it just took on a life of its own after that. So,
Laurene, guess what?
What?
It's already our halftime break.
Oh my God!
So we're talking to Laurene Gomez on the Haunted Chronicles, and we'll be right back, fellas. Welcome back to the Haunted Chronicles, home of your guaranteed halftime shout out for those in the chat room. So thanks for coming tonight. Carrie, Dr. Dave, Indy, Dwayne, Maggie Renee, Randy, Nicholas, listening in Utah, Jane Doe, Kimmy J, Tony, Mark, Doug, Kara E, Debbie, Desi, Eric, Cheryl, the Fifth Elephant, and also Tiffany's listening on tomorrow, and Frankie B, and Junebug, Any shout outs, fellas?
Not for me. How about
Not for
you?
you.
How about Hi
I don't even
everybody.
know those people.
Well, they're listening and they love it so far. I just want to mention our schedule for the rest of the year. Next week, we're having Brandon Hurd on, who has an incredible story about him, what happened when he used a Ouija board.
Ooh.
Um, and then the week after that, we have our friends Victor and Linda Salazar. Victor has a new book out, and we're going to talk about that. And on December 23rd, we're going to take it off, but I got a last minute guest. It's Chris Quarantino, and you may know him as Little Chris Lutz, one of the children that grew up in the house that became the book and movie The Amityville Horror.
Wow. Oh,
That
that's
sounds
a good one.
good.
Yeah, we got some good guests coming up. And where do we leave off? The
The house, the demon cabin
Demon Lake.
on
Yeah.
the Demon Lake. Demon
Oh,
Lake.
Demon
So,
Lake.
yeah. So
That's
tell
not
us
the
more.
name of the lake, by the way.
No, we just have decided. Dr. Dave, he gave that the title. So.
Well, there was I forgot to tell you that while I was out there with kind of all the craziness happening, there was also a black witch that I subsequently learned had put a spell on me. And she wanted to get me out of the picture, so she tried to put a spell on me to get me to drive my car into the lake so I would be no more.
What was
And
going on
I
up
guess,
there?
Yeah, really?
oh, it was absolute craziness up there. There's a lot of bad energy in that area, I guess. So, but in order to put a spell on me, one of the tools that she needed, she had to use an animal sacrifice. And I remember she had this little kitten, and the kitten's name was Gray McPherson. I will never forget that. She named him Gray McPherson, a little gray kitty, cute as all get out. And she had to sacrifice him. And I later found out that I'm sorry to be so graphic, but because I'm an animal lover, but she had killed her kitten by bashing its head in with a hammer.
Oh my God!
I mean, I know. Talk about evil. Talk about
Wow.
evil.
Fearsome.
So, Gray McPherson, yep. So his spirit lives on, though.
Oh.
So, yeah, shortly after that, we packed up and got the heck out of there. But I realized when we were talking during the break that I hadn't finished telling you how the visitations, because I was getting visited every year by those negative entities that kept pulling my legs down in my sleep. So those visits finally ended because I think partly because I was getting so much information and learning so much. And I always tell my clients when I'm in session that knowledge is power, and we have to empower ourselves. If we get like a diagnosis of cancer, of course we get very scared and we feel powerless and helpless and afraid. But the reason for that fear is because we're so afraid of the unknown. We don't have the information. And if we can arm ourselves with the information, we can feel empowered. We don't have to feel helpless. We can empower ourselves. So I think through the years, and it was a gradual process. It didn't happen overnight. But through the years, I grew stronger because I learned about these things, and I gave myself the power to not be afraid of it anymore. So the last time it visited me was I think shortly after I met the Warrens and I met you, Jim. I was living in West Haven at that time, and I remember it did visit me again at night, in the middle of the night, and it woke me up, and it angered me at that point because I realized it wasn't just me in bed. My significant other was laying in bed next to me, and I got mad at that point because I'm thinking, you know what, it's one thing to come and visit me and scare me and try to scare me, but now you're affecting my family members, and I'm not going to have that. How dare you do that? And I just got angry, and I wasn't afraid of it anymore. And I think once I lost that fear, it never came back. It never visited me again. After 20 years of visitations, it was gone. And I think that's why, because I wasn't afraid of it anymore. So if I
Ooh.
could impart one thing to your listeners, just empower yourself. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. And, people always ask me, how did you go on these investigations and how did you, meet with these people who are demonically possessed? And, weren't you afraid? And it's like, no, not really, because I've always felt protected. And, after a while, you just realize you can do it yourself. You could protect yourself. And I'm not saying I didn't have God with me. Of course I did, and I so appreciate that. But God also allows us to empower ourselves. And I think that's something that I'll always take with me now. Just, knowledge is power. And we have choices to make. And I make choices every day. So if I could do it, anybody can do it. That's what I say.
Right.
So
We have
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
that's a
There you
great
go.
story and
Yeah.
lesson. We have a question from the chat room
Hmm.
from Kara
Oh,
E.
okay.
Does Laurene ever get
Hi,
any
Kara.
patients? Hi, Kara. She said, does Laurene ever get any patients that claim what's going on with them is because of something paranormal happening?
Great question.
That is a great question. And Jim, I don't know if you even know this, but after I met the Warrens and we started going out on cases together, Ed would refer patients to me, people who were victims of these attacks. I was starting to see them at that point. I was doing internships. I was finishing up and I was doing internships at school. So, which was a good thing because I wasn't getting any money for this. I wasn't profiting at all. I would see them and counsel them, and my agency that I was interning through, they would get paid, so they wouldn't be out anything. But I was basically giving free care to these people. So it actually worked out very well because the people that we were meeting who were victims of this, they would come and get some services and hopefully feel empowered by the time we were done, and just get some help wrapping their brains around this and
I
not
have a
feeling
little
so isolated.
Yeah.
follow-up question for that one. Do you,
Sure.
it was always a theory, but did you find out in your experiences that people that might have a little bit of mental illness or are like easier prey for negative entities or however you want to put that?
Well, that's kind of a hard question to answer because you have to define a little bit of mental illness.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, are you talking about things like
Kind of.
depression or anxiety or full blown psychosis or
Well, I mean,
schizophrenia? I mean,
like especially with some of the possible possession cases we dealt with. Um, do you like? I mean, there's a. Do you think it's easier for? Do they pick on people that are weak? As I'm saying, do you think?
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. The vulnerable people that would not quickly be believed. It could easily be written off as, oh, well, he's just having another episode, type of thing. And, that's just him. So, and actually in my day job working for the state, I work at the state psychiatric hospital, and I do see some people, walking through the wards. I encounter different people, and some of them are there with the NGRI, insanity plea, not guilty by reason of insanity, and these are some hardcore people. They've committed murders and different horrible acts, and sometimes just walking through the wards, I can feel. And this only happened like maybe 3 or 4 times in all the years that I've been there, but there were a small handful of people that I could look at and say, that guy, it's not mental illness. That's not the reason he's here. There's something else, like there's something attached to him, or he's got some entity dwelling within him, or it's just that it reminds me, when I see someone like that, it reminds me of a case that you and I went on with the Warrens back in Bridgeport with a little girl, and I think that was that was something that really startled me.
What was that case
Because
about?
I mean, I had my well, it was we thought we were going to, it was like a 2-family house in Bridgeport, and we thought we were going to a case that was just a regular ghost case, a haunting. And everybody, we went up and we kind of split up in the house, and some people were going upstairs and some people were going downstairs. And I was rounding a corner, and as soon as I went around the corner, I walked into another room, and there was a little girl there, one of the family members. And as soon as I looked at her, as soon as I saw her eyes, I swear to you, my heart just stopped beating. It must have skipped a couple beats, and I'm sure my heart went up in my chest or whatever, but it just burned into my throat. And it was that same feeling of that hatred that little girl looked at me, that same hatred that I felt on the lake that night. It's unmistakable. When you feel that once, it stays with you, and you can recognize it when you come across it later on in life. And that girl, there was no doubt in my mind when I looked at that girl that she either was possessed or she had an infestation going on, but there was evil around her. And, I think I told you that night. I think I told you my impressions that night. I don't know if you remember, but I mean, yeah.
I'm getting old.
And I felt bad for that little girl because I don't
How
really
old was she,
recall what
Laurene?
happened. The little
How
girl
old
was
was
probably about 8 or 9 years old, I would say. Yeah, probably about 8 or 9 years old. And she had jet black hair. And she was a cute little thing, but it was hard to see her through the hatred, through those really dark eyes. And just, yeah. And I often wondered about her through the years, like whatever happened to her, So.
I've been. Go ahead. You have a question?
No, I was just going to say that I wonder, like, for you guys, having worked on some of these cases and with young children that were involved, have you ever gone back to find out what happened to anybody?
Well, some of the cases we remained involved with, and I'm sure it's probably not great to get emotionally involved or too connected to the families, but there were families that were very endearing. I mean, and we did get connected with. In fact, the Massachusetts case, the one where that was on Primetime Live, they invited us to the sister's wedding, and it was wonderful to be there. So later on, she was fine. She's a wonderful singer. And Jimmy, I think you have tapes of her singing. She has like an operatic voice. And, and she sang at her sister's wedding, and it brought tears to all of our eyes. And just, it was very moving, very moving. And we stayed in touch with them for a number of years. So it was just a very endearing, loving family. So.
And you know what? I really wanted to talk about when you're involved with the movie Hostage to the Devil, and you were interviewed about your experiences, and I've been asked so many times, what are the signs of possession, and talking in different languages and knowledge of the unknown, and the incredible strength that they have, and there's really no way to prove, what thing is, and you described it so well that I can't describe it in my words, but being in the field you explain, like people say that anybody could break out of straps if they're I mean, these are hospital restraints that we used.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to the listeners on how that's really not that normal that anybody could break out of? Like, what is needed to break out of something like that?
Well, you need a severe adrenaline rush, basically, and that comes from. That's usually. It's kind of hard to explain, but. No, you can't just willingly break out of those restraints. It's very difficult. I have seen patients break out of the restraints at work, at my day job, but that is a severe adrenaline rush, and that comes from different experiences. You could have like a traumatic event happening where you can gain that kind of strength. I'm sure you've heard stories about a mother seeing their child get trapped under a car, and just because of the love from a mother to her child, she is able to, lift that car or at least the fender off the child just to get the child free. And that is extreme adrenaline rush. And it's just from a traumatic experience or great fear or just, there's a couple of things, but you can't just will that to happen. The body works on automatic pilot in situations like that. Oftentimes in traumatic situations, the body goes into shock and it kind of shuts down, which is much more of a survival mechanism. So it's nothing you can call on at will. That's the body leading the way. The body leads the brain at that point, rather than the brain leading the body. So if I were to fake being possessed and try to break out of restraints, I couldn't do it. I can't just willingly, leave my body with the brain. That it would have to take my body leading my brain and breaking out from a traumatic experience. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if I did.
Like I was trying to explain to someone that, but voluntarily sitting in a chair and being restrained with priests saying some prayers in your presence isn't going to give you that strength to just snap out of buckles and restraints.
No.
So that explains it much.
No, not without an awful lot of assistance from another entity. So.
All right.
Wow.
We only have 3 minutes left. What didn't we talk about that we could fit in?
Well, I have a question for you. So, Laurene, when I was younger, I used to get the sleep paralysis. I mean, it haunted me. I was afraid to go to bed at night because it was so strong. What is that all about? I mean, I've heard people go, oh, no, that's just a thing your body does. And then I've heard, other people say, no, that's somebody coming to visit you, or so I don't know. What is your take on all that?
Well, I mean, I think it depends. I think it could be both. I think it could be, something external as well as something internal. I think it depends on what's going on with the person, with their particular situation in life. For me, in my experience with the sleep paralysis, it was not self-induced. That was external. I think that was something putting me into paralysis, which is a very helpless feeling, which further feeds the power of the entity, to feel fear and helplessness. With your case, if you didn't have anything, attacking you, then maybe it was self-induced. Maybe, I don't even want to speculate on the different reasons, but, sometimes maybe it was just a severe case of relaxation. Sometimes the mind just relaxes and uses sleep time as a way of recharging our batteries, basically. So maybe you just went into severe relaxation mode. I don't know. I don't know what the circumstance was at the time. But to answer your question, I think it could be both, self-induced and externally induced. So.
Gotcha.
Wow,
but it's freaky either way.
It's the scariest thing you've ever gone through. And it's really awful when you're just lying there and this is what scared me when finally, it went on for a year. And by the ending, before it stopped, I could open my eyes and see everything in the room, and I still couldn't move. It wasn't like I was sleeping. I could open my eyes, and I still couldn't budge. And it was the most frightening. I mean, it hasn't happened since I was about 15, but it was a year of, I had horrible insomnia. I still do because of that, because I went through such a...
Because of that. Yeah, it becomes
really
like
awful.
A self-fulfilling prophecy then, because then you're afraid to go to sleep because of...
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Crazy.
Lorene, thank you for joining us. The hour is over already.
Can you believe it? That's so fast.
That was great.
You were
Great
amazing.
Job.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night, Jennifer. Lorene, thank you, Dr. Dave and Paul, for helping out.
Yes.
Good night, everyone. See you next
Thank
week.
you for having
Good
me.
night. Yeah.
Good night.